Hello, and thank you for joining us today as we discuss the impact of the recent earthquake that struck Haiti over the weekend. The devastation is unimaginable, with more than 1,900 lives lost and at least 10,000 injured, and thousands of buildings destroyed or damaged. Rescue efforts have been hampered by heavy rains brought on by Tropical Storm Grace, and hospitals are struggling to treat the influx of earthquake victims. They lack critical medical equipment and supplies. Today, we'll hear from partners who are on the ground and able to convey the effects of the earthquake firsthand, including the American Chamber of Commerce in Haiti and other international disaster relief organizations. While Haiti tries to recover from this tragic earthquake, disasters continue here across the United States. For example, wildfires have burned more than 4 million acres this year alone. And California is fighting the second largest fire in state history, the Dixie Fire, which has grown to over 600,000 acres and is only 33% contained as of this morning. And that's just one fire. Along our coastal shores, tropical weather continues to pose threats. We know that the Henri is off the coast of Bermuda, and now, according to recent forecasts, it could hit coastal New England this weekend as a hurricane. And now, with all of this, we're entering hurricane season, right in the heart of it. I'm Mark DeCourcy, the Senior Vice President of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, and I lead the Chamber's Corporate Citizenship Center. At the Chamber Foundation, we believe that business is a force for good. That's especially evident during times of disaster. But we know that no one sector can do it alone. Businesses, government, nonprofits, we all need to work together in partnership. That's where impactful response and long-term recovery really take shape. For those of you who are looking for ways to assist with recovery efforts, the Foundation website has built a resource page where we link a number of nonprofit partners who are active in response efforts. For today's call, we've got a full agenda, focusing the first half of the call on Haiti and the second half of the call on disasters here in the U.S. After each discussion, we'll open it up for questions. You can submit your questions throughout the call by entering them into the chat box. We'll then share them with the presenters. Now, before we begin, I do want to thank the companies who have made this call possible through their support of the Chamber Foundation's Disaster Response and Community Resilience Program. We couldn't do this without their help. So let's get started. I'd like to introduce the speakers for our discussion on the earthquake in Haiti. First, we have Elizabeth Bellardo, Deputy Manager for Coordination for USAID's Response Management Team, Sebastian Rhodes-Stampa, Chief of Emergency Response at UN OCHA, Michael Lemke, Board Member of the AmCham in Haiti, and the Vice President and Association of American Chambers of Commerce in Latin America and the Caribbean, known as ACLA, and Thomas Tyke, President and CEO of Direct Relief. To open today's call, I'd like to welcome Elizabeth Bellardo to share with us how the U.S. government is responding to the needs in Haiti and how the private sector can support those efforts. Elizabeth, over to you.
Thanks so much. I'm glad to be able to join everyone this afternoon. I think we all know on August 14th, magnitude 7.2 earthquake struck southwest Haiti. Of course, assessments are ongoing, but and we're seeing aftershocks. We're seeing a rising number of people confirmed dead, 9,900 injured, figures expected to rise, all very serious and concerning. That same day, at the direction of President Biden, the United States government rapidly mobilized to assist the government of Haiti and the Haitian people after the earthquake. Hours after it struck, the president authorized an immediate response and designated USAID Administrator Samantha Power as the senior U.S. official to coordinate U.S. government response efforts. And we deployed a disaster assistance response team. So the disaster assistance response team is also known as the DART, currently on the ground and leading the U.S. government response efforts in close coordination with our colleagues from the Department of Defense Southern Command. We're working with a really great set of partners. USAID is supporting the World Food Program on logistics and food distribution, working with IOM for distribution of relief items, hygiene kits, jerry cans, masks for COVID as well. we also have a long standing set of humanitarian partners in Haiti that we are working with. So a real robust response from the U.S. Government. Of course, engagement with private sector is critical, and so we are very glad to see OCHA on the line here. We've been working with OCHA's Connecting Business Initiative in their development of the How Business Help guide, and we're really focused on meeting those urgent needs for those affected by the earthquake. And so I think some of the ways in which the private sector can help the response and recovery. We've learned a lot from histories of responding to disasters. I think the main thing we would say here is making those connections with reputable relief and charitable organizations on the ground and connecting closely with them and understanding exactly what they need and how they can help. Usually cash donations really are the most efficient form of assistance, especially in the early days after a sudden onset event. Cash allows relief supplies to be just in local markets close to the disaster site, and this can have a knock-on effect of stimulating the local economy, providing employment, generating cash flow, and also sort of facilitates the quick response of organizations responding. So with that, I will stop and hand it back to you, but appreciate the opportunity to join in the conversation and listen from the colleagues on the panel today.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth, very much for what you and USAID are doing. Sebastian, tell us what OCHA is up to. Over to you.
Delighted to. Thank you very much indeed. And look, thanks so much to the Chamber for organising the call. It wasn't so long ago that we didn't really realise in the international humanitarian response system how important and valuable the private sector is increasingly to response and preparedness. And often are the first responders at a local level. So calls like this are really critical, and I appreciate the opportunity. So thank you so much. Now, I may repeat some of the things Elizabeth said, and I hope not to. I know Haiti well. I was leading field operations there a couple of years ago in response to Hurricane Matthew, which was in the same area that the earthquake has affected. We've produced a business guide, and Mark, I hope you'll give that out to the people on the call, which has references and resources that may be of interest to all of you. Elizabeth sort of told you what the consequences were, just a little bit more. The Haitian Civil Protection reckoned that about 61,000 homes have been destroyed, about 77,000 have sustained damages, leaving thousands homeless, generating pressing needs to provide adequate shelter, access to water, sanitation, hygiene, and health services, and health is a real mess at the moment. It's an extremely challenging multi-hazard operating environment characterized by pre-existing displacement from the 2010 floods, food insecurity, gang violence, COVID-19, political instability, and it's additionally complicated by flooding caused by tropical cyclone Grace, which I just see as intensified into a hurricane and maybe a problem elsewhere. The government and the United Nations and our partners are working to improve humanitarian access, and the UN is allocating $8 million immediately from the Central Emergency Response Fund to deliver life-saving assistance. We are responding through the humanitarian country team, that team based in Haiti, and I have dispatched a 25-odd person team, which complements what the DART is doing, the team that Elizabeth was talking about, and they are assessing the needs and beginning to build the response. So what's the gaps and the needs we're seeing? Most importantly, efficient coordination between the government and the multiple actors present in Haiti is paramount. For the time being, we'll continue and complete immediate search and rescue operations. We've pulled about 70 people from the rubble. We're reaching the sort of golden hour where we're not going to get more people alive from the rubble, and we'll move into life-sustaining rather than life-saving. We really need to provide medical support. The health situation is dire. It remains the most pressing concern. Most hospitals and health places have been damaged or destroyed, and those still operating are completely overwhelmed, lacking sufficient personnel and medical supplies. Thousands are obviously homeless and displaced, in dire need of finding shelter in a safe environment, and we need to provide water sanitation and hygiene. Waterborne disease like cholera can pick up very, very quickly in these environments, and it kills very fast. So how can you help? Please, please, please support organizations that are already present in Haiti and have a demonstrated track record, and try to avoid disrupting local markets and supply operations as locally as possible. A bit of a steer here, we and the United Nations Development Programme support something called the Connected Business Initiative, and the member network in Haiti is called the GERCA. That coordinates local private sector and civil society and diaspora contributions within the National Disaster Management Coordination Mechanism. It's not the only one. There are local businesses like GERCA and AmCham Haiti, and they are key stakeholders in the response. It's really important to coordinate with them. GERCA is currently assessing local private sector resources and capacities that can be mobilized to support the response and recovery efforts. And it's important that we don't import supplies which are already available in country. Please remember, local infrastructure and logistic capacities are limited, and they can be overwhelmed by external support. Please consider, as Elizabeth said, donating cash instead of in kind wherever possible. It's more effective, it's faster, and it enables people to make decisions about their lives and what they want to do. Please coordinate with others to avoid duplication and provision of unsolicited relief items. And if you decide to make in-kind contributions, please ensure your support meets the critical needs of the affected population and is accepted critically by government and local community. Make sure the organisation you're supporting has the capacity to store, transport, and to deliver supplies. Please make sure that in-kind contributions meet humanitarian quality standards, the sphere standards, and that's it. I'd like to thank you all so much. Thank the Chamber for organising the call. Thank you for participating. If there's anything else we can do, please reach out to us. We'd be delighted to speak to you. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you, Sebastian, and we'll certainly circulate the business guide and make it available on our website for the companies who are on the call, and even those that are not, but should be. Your points are all well taken. Thank you so much for sharing them. I do want to remind the audience that to submit your questions in advance. So when we get to the Q&A, we've got a big long list to get through with these four speakers. So next up, Michael Lemke. Michael, AmCham Haiti, from Haiti. Tell us. Oh, just hold on a second. We're going to fix your audio. I'd like to try it again.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on this platform and bring further attention to our beautiful country, Haiti. Like my colleague said, Haiti the earthquake struck in two different sites along the southern peninsula of Haiti, affecting most of the cities and towns, both on the north and south part of the peninsula. The main cities getting a lot of the attention is Lecay and Jérémie. However, from past experience, the latest being it was Hurricane Matthew in 2016. We want to make sure that all the towns along the main artery leading to the south from the capital, called Route Nationale 2, are taken care of as well. The southern part of the country is quite rural, beautiful beaches, got a lot of hotels. Most of them have collapsed. La Vache, which for me is one of the most beautiful tourist destinations to visit, was severely destroyed, and I don't think they'll be able to build back anytime soon. Have been impacted. The south is kind of the green belt where a lot of the agriculture and the fruits come from the south and go to the capital to supply the supermarkets. There's also an important trade of vetiver oil. Vetiver oil is used to make the perfumes and cosmetics shipped to Europe. However, the fact that most of the South relies on the capital for fuel and all other basic goods, we were able to quickly provide the much needed help they needed pretty quick after the earthquake. Ground moving equipment was quickly dispatched. To allow that access, ACA, which reached out to me fairly quickly, we were able to post a list of medical supplies which were needed, on top of the regular water and, of course, the basic foodstuffs that come when these types of disasters occur. Unfortunately, we had a tropical storm depression named Grace, whose timing could not have been worse, dropping large amounts of water while most inhabitants remained outside due to the constant aftershocks that were still being felt. Despite the weather could have been much worse, we had anticipated it to hit even stronger. Yesterday, I got great news where 16 people were rescued from under the rubble, which gave a lot of positive vibes to all the workers and all the people that were involved in the relief efforts. AmCham Haiti has also partnered up with the Ministry of Health. We're going to work on doing a blood drive to get as much blood as possible from volunteers and send to the South. It's very important that people remember to give blood when possible, as often as possible, and not to wait when incidents do happen to donate. We also want to make sure, like the other colleagues on this call said, that the entities that want to donate, to be sure that donations go to organizations that have a track record in Haiti and have the experience and local know-how to ensure that all the required efficiencies are met. We also have to make sure that all the new constructions that will be done after are respecting the international norms to limit the casualties next time around that we suffer a natural disaster. Some of these organizations that we recommend, or which I support, is Food for the Poor, Mission of Hope, and Haiti One Network. AGLK, which is started, I believe, in 2008, is Gestion des risques et la continuité des activités. They're great contact persons to go through, and if any details are needed on these organizations or AmCham, please feel free to contact me, and we will provide more details. If there are any questions, I'm always available. Thank you very much once again.
Yeah, thank you very much, Michael. And the Chamber Foundation will continue to list the trusted nonprofits that we know of, and we consult with USAID as well as UNOCHA on those. Sebastian has mentioned that his colleague Karen Smith at smith3@un.org can also be a resource for any of those people who have questions. I want to give our last speaker plenty of time. Thomas Tyke is the president and CEO of Direct Relief. Thomas has people on the ground. He has supplies en route, and he's got big news. Thomas, to you.
Well, thank you, Mark, and everybody, all the speakers. I agree with everything that's been said. I think from Direct Relief's perspective, we have past 40 years, there's a chronic gap. The markets don't serve everything. And I think for context, I think these emergencies create a simultaneous spike in demand, a loss of supply, and a contraction of the supply lines, right? So I think, you need more, and there's less available because it gets damaged, and the means through which this, supply flows get pinched when the roads wash out, or I think in the case of gang-controlled highway in the south, which is, apparently been taken care of, so there's a flow going on. But I think we have an ongoing support program where we fill specific health requests that come from hospitals that are well placed. St. Boniface being one that's probably the most central anchor facility in the region that was undamaged, was already near capacity, is now over capacity. That's a partner organization, Direct Relief, that we provide support to on an ongoing basis, basically filling orders that have to be cleared through MSPP, kind of the importing mechanism, so it meets all the standards, both the international standards and the Haitian standards. I think on this one, just so folks know, the private organization began immediately for health and medical, really anchored by the University of Miami, which has a very strong affiliation with Haiti. Dr. Barth Green, Dr. Henri Ford, who's Haitian and the dean of the medical school. They had a 60-person call with most everybody on, including the deputy MSPP director and the deputy minister of health by noon Eastern time on Saturday. They had another call at 9 p.m. that night Eastern, and we've had calls every day. So I think the organization and coordination, both among the private actors in the U.S. and with the Haitian government officials, as well as the specific sites at Partners in Health in Ribelet, St. Boniface, St. Luke, and St. Damien in Port-au-Prince, Guesquio up at Jérémie. These are all groups that we work with on an ongoing basis, and they all need help on an ongoing basis. So the acute crisis that comes along on top of a chronic problem just exacerbates what's already a dire situation for all the reasons the other speakers have met. So I'm delighted that one of the sponsors that whose name was on the logo, FedEx, has confirmed that they're going to be providing an MD-11 aircraft. They've locked that in for next week. It's great from direct release perspective because we have a protocol for basically filling orders. You know, we don't send stuff to a pot. We send fill orders specifically, and that will be about a 90-ton capacity. We'll able to bulk up, fill bigger orders, and continue to work to make sure that the only thing that's being sent to Haiti is to people who live there, are licensed there, it's approved by the government. And, you know, just wanted to thank Pfizer, HP, Medtronic, and BD, who are also on that list, whose material is already en route with Pfizer's financial support, FedEx's support, as they often do. It's catalytic to really mobilize and plan around a much bigger capacity. So I can't thank the team at FedEx enough for stepping up again. They certainly understand the logistics challenge and work through them every day. So yeah, we're here. I'll put the names of those sites in specific. They have U.S. Arms, University of Miami, Project Metashare, St. Boniface, in Fond du Blanc, Guesquio. These are all fine organizations run in Haiti, closely affiliated with the Ministry of Health, and just need help. I think the caution against sending stuff is a good one. However, you know, money is converted to goods and services, so you got to be careful what goods and services are converted to as well. So I think these groups have our highest trust, and they're licensed and they need help. And thank you again for all the members of the Chamber for doing what you do so often, and Mark for pulling this call together.
You're very welcome, Thomas. Let's get into the questions. So we've got a bunch, and I'm trying to group them up and divvy them out to our speakers. So first question, I think, is for Elizabeth and for Sebastian. Unlike in 2010, there is a functioning Haitian government. How is the Haitian government coordinating currently with the civil society sector?
I'd be sorry. I'd be happy to jump in, Elizabeth, if you'll allow me. It's through organisations like AmCham and AJERCA, who AJERCA, for instance, has a seat in the CUN, in the National Disaster Management Agency. They are an integral part of that, as AmCham are a representative of the broader community. And again, my colleague from AmCham can speak to this. But Haiti, through tragic circumstance, has had to, more so than perhaps its neighbors, understand how it works with civil society and the private sector and adapt to that very quickly. And they've done relatively well, so that you have a system in Haiti where you have broad organizations like AmCham, like AJERCA, who are there to bring into the government response civil society and private sector.
Elizabeth, would you like to add anything?
No, I think Sebastian covered it. Thanks.
Another question is about the energy infrastructure, Michael. Again, in 2010, it was complete devastation. Particularly in the Southern Peninsula, how are utilities working, or are they?
I have to say, despite much of the government's efforts since the earthquake, electricity has always been a problem. Most businesses and households that can afford it have backup power, have backup inverter. You know, energy is very expensive. Subsidized fuel is subsidized by the government, which is another problem. So the South, you know, over the years, many of these cities have become independent in a way and don't rely much on the government, which when these types of disasters happen, it kind of builds them up to to get through it much quicker and not wait for a response. In terms of energy, flashlights would be needed, generators, etc. But obviously, much of the fuel comes from the capital anyway. So the South energy from the state is very, very sporadic. And I think despite all efforts, it's going to take a long time before that gets fixed or that gets resolved.
And Michael, could you comment a little bit about the road system?
The road system in Haiti is there's three main arteries or four. Route Nationale 1, which goes from Port-au-Prince to the north. Route Nationale number 2, which goes from Port-au-Prince to the south. All these are two-lane highways, pretty good. And then you have the third and fourth that go from the capital to the central and up again. I know at certain points there were mudslides and landslides. I've seen video footage and I've seen reports with the government and TPTC, which is the public works, mobilizing a lot of ground moving equipment to that region to make space. Sunrise Airlines and with some of these other partners have been able to send a lot of the much needed medical supply via Okai towards the airport. So, and once there, they dispatch it to the smaller towns. So I don't have the full transparency on which or where roads are blocked, but I know government, despite no president in charge, the government has done a remarkable job in short notice to get the much needed help to where it needs to be. Quite surprising.
And Thomas, we all agree, cash first, right? To resource these nonprofits that are responding. But there are certain companies, and some of those companies are on this call today, who have superpowers, right? They make product or they have services that are essential. Where's the best place for them to plug in with the nonprofit community to say, we've got something unique that we can offer? How do they best do that?
Yeah, I think this week, I think the government of Haiti, the Ministry of Health, has kind of a consolidated needs list that's specific. For us, we do this all the time. I think you have to know where it's going. I think a lot of these needs, everyone wants to do a needs assessment. They all get aggregated, and you're not quite sure who's going to receive it. So for us, it's always better to aim at a fixed site, a specific hospital where you know who the end user is. And you can confirm that because we pack it, wrap it, ship it to that site, and essentially fill an order. The University of Miami is organizing in their daily calls. There are over 100 people now, and it has companies, all these professional associations of surgeons. They get very specific very fast at what type of orthopedic internal fixation devices are needed. But I think things like the Medtronic sutures and BD needles and syringes that we've already sent, it's really critical that you can't just money doesn't create those things immediately, and it's tough sometimes for companies to just survey their inventory, and the request of we need everything is totally unhelpful. So it really does have to get, for medical provisions, it's not like food, and people know what to do with a bag of rice, right? You have to know the gauge of the needle or the size of the suture or whatever it is. And so I think for now, I'd be happy to share you the contact information at the University of Miami is convening daily meetings with dozens of groups for this purpose and working very closely with MSPP and the Ministry of Health that they know very well because, Dr. Green is part of Bernard Mevs and Project MetaShare, Barth Green, who's managing it. But it's a good place to plug in, particularly for any health and medical. I think, as Michael said, the fuel costs out of Fond du Blanc, the fuel costs have never been higher, was the report today. So that spike in cost because of the shortage of jet fuel and regular fuel, I think those are the kind of spiking costs that often happen. So it's good to get, I think, money to the places that are actually incurring the operational burden, like St. Boniface, St. Luke, St. Damien, Gesquiope, and Jeremy, Partners in Health. And I think for Sebastian's purposes, we work very closely with PAHO, and actually we store stuff at PAHO in Panama and have stuff en route to PAHO, Haiti, again, filling a specific request. And some of that arrived today from Puerto Rico, as it turns out.
Thank you, Thomas. And I do remember Dr. Barth Green from the 2010 response. They do amazing work in Miami. Well, that's all the time we have for this particular session. I want to thank Elizabeth, Sebastian, Michael, and Thomas for joining us. We're going to pivot and put up a slide while we switch speakers and bring in our domestic responders. So if the audience can bear with us for just 1 minute while we do that, and also want to again thank our 4 speakers for joining us today to talk about Haiti.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Hey, now we'll begin our second segment of this call focused on disasters in the U.S. From wildfires to the west to the threat of tropical disturbance in the Gulf and also in the east, disasters in all forms impact livelihoods of countless individuals, businesses, and communities year-round. We just discussed this at our 10th annual Building Resilience Conference in July that we co-host with Fema, DHS, and U.S. Northern Command. It's more important now than ever that the 3 sectors can work together. With us today, we want to share an update on the wildfires raging across the western U.S. We have 4 speakers: Robert Fenton, who's the Regional Administrator for FEMA Region 9, Abby Browning, who's the Chief of the Private Sector and NGO Coordination for Cal Office of Emergency Management, Larry Dickey, who's the EVP of the California Chamber of Commerce, and Trevor Reagan, who's the Senior Vice President of Disaster Cycle Services at the American Red Cross. I'd like to now turn it over to our first speaker, Administrator Robert Fenton.
Well, thanks, and I appreciate you having me on this panel. As kind of you were discussing, we've seen the size and complexity of our disasters grow over the last couple of years, and it really takes a whole community effort to be able to respond to these events, and private sector is a key partner in that partnership. There's never been a better day to prepare for disasters. Your efforts before the disaster strike can save lives, and not only save lives, but protect your operations and contribute to a broader community readiness. And so I want to highlight some important steps that you can take to prepare for threats or hazards, especially in light of what's happening today. As you see on the news, wildfires can strike at any time. Sometimes they're no-notice events with very limited warnings and causing people to evacuate, in the middle of the night. And it impacts not only their homes, but their businesses and their communities. So, and California has been impacted, as I'm sure Abby will talk about, 8 of the largest 10 fires in history happening just over the last 5 years. However, most disasters and risks are well known. In addition to wildfires, we see
I think we've got a frozen administrator.
Or other risks that happen throughout the year. Last year was the second most active hurricane season on record, and is also caused significant impacts to the southeastern United States. In large disasters, FEMA activates its National Business COC to exchange information and facilitate public and private sector partnerships within states. My region usually unifies with the state in their state business COC, which I'm sure Abby will explain in greater detail later on. It's, I think, important to know the risks in your area, and especially as they grow. And so building partnerships with state and local emergency management offices are critical. Also, your insurance providers can help and can also explore FEMA's national risk inventory. If you go to www.hazards.fema.gov, /NRI/. You could go down to your area and see the risks within your area so you can be better prepared for that. I think another key thing is know your partners. Often say in emergency management that you don't want to meet your critical partners on the first day of your life that day. So connections with private sector partners like your
Okay,
impact
Administrator.
you.
Okay.
That may be details about power and communication outages or restoration. It could be information on road closures or access information, and it could be information about resources. Know your independencies. Know your supply chains and what may impact you. We've seen that happen over time where the event doesn't impact you directly, but your supply chain is impacted by another event on the other side of the country. Protect yourself financially through insurance and continuity planning. As you understand your risk better and what your partners face, check also your insurance company. We see too many times in disasters, small businesses never able to recover from a natural disaster, as most disasters don't lead to federal declarations. So your property, casualty, and business interruption and overinsurance policies are critical to aid you in recovery. As you review your own disaster readiness, know that you can also get help from the broader community. Abby has years of experience in this. I'm sure we'll talk to you a little bit about this as far as within your community. At FEMA and across the emergency management community, there are opportunities to deliver solutions, sometimes through corporate social responsible programs, but more often through our procurement process. And if you're looking for interest in doing business with FEMA, I encourage you to look at our Doing Business with FEMA webpage that provides a way for you to register and understand opportunities there. Let me end with thanking you for your interest, and I look forward to your questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Administrator. Abby, we're going to go to you. I was doing a side-by-side between the 2018, 2020, and now 2021 fires, and it doesn't look good. Can you give us a sit rep on what's happening now in California and how much trouble are we in?
Yeah, absolutely. The way that you framed that question, we are definitely in trouble, but it is nothing that I'm not fully confident that we can rise to the occasion and respond to and prepare for adequately. But the fires are getting hotter. The ground is getting drier, and the winds are getting stronger in every sense of the word. And so that is something that we have to deal with. Currently in California, first of all, excuse me, I do have a bit of a congestion, and so I apologize up front about if I sound funny or I start coughing. I thoroughly apologize. But the situation in California right now is interesting, and it is bad, and it is early in the fire season. Right now, we have 1,054,289 acres burning. That is the most up-to-date number that I have. That is 10 active fires across California. Most of those are in the Northern California area, north, east of Sacramento, and the lion's share of those acres are within the Dixie Fire, which is the largest fire that we have recorded. That is 635,000 acres. To give you a little bit of perspective as to how big that is, the state of Rhode Island is 988,000 acres. And so this is getting close to being the size of the state of Rhode Island. But if you add all of our fires together, we have more burning than that. It is a very, very large amount. Currently, at this time, about 34,000 structures are threatened, and we have lost 1,400 structures, 800 of those being residential structures. At the time, there are 31,000 people evacuated, with 491 of those folks staying in shelters overnight. Those numbers don't seem to match up. And what I wanted to explain is where these fires are. They are out in very remote areas, in rural areas. A lot of it is U.S. forest land. But the communities that they are affecting, they are small communities, but they are the entire community. And so when we lose a town like Greenville, it may only have 800 residents, but that's their entire town. And so that is one of the issues that we're dealing with. We have a lot of federally recognized tribes that have lands up there and communities that we are working with, and we have are actively trying to save those homes. Thankfully, at this time, we have not had any fatalities for this, but the actual rate of speed of the fires is fast. If you are told to evacuate, you go. You do not wait. It is one of those situations. And then, of course, because of the fires, the air quality in California is really, really bad at the moment. In Sacramento, it was very apocalyptic going outside this morning, and because the fires are close to Sacramento, the sun was orange, and you could see the smoke, and it's never a good sign. Our firefighters are busy working on the fires, and they have been for quite some time. They're tired. And like I said, this is just the beginning. This is just August. Fire season runs about the same time as hurricane season. So if you think about it that way, we still have September, October, and then the fire that you were referencing, Mark, in 2018, the campfire that where we lost Paradise, California, that started on November the 8th. And so we've got quite a ways to go, and we've already burned over 1 million acres. And so that's a lot to take in. It's a lot to be prepared for. I was just in a briefing earlier with CAL FIRE and the U.S. Forest Service talking about the efforts and the conditions that we're facing and how we're expecting this to move into Southern California in the next few weeks to have issues there as well. So having said that, there are a lot of ways that corporations can help. And as Mr. Fenton mentioned earlier, we do have a business operations center on the state level. If anyone is interested, I'm more than happy to put you on our distribution list. We put out information usually twice a day. There are situation reports that tells all of this information, including road closures, boil notices, information that you would need. But the most important piece is that it's a link to the State Operations Center. In California, we think very, very highly of the entire community and our private sector. They sit at the table with us. That is my job, being that representative in the State Operations Center, and to make sure that we have all the information given to them that they need to keep their employees safe as well. And then the recovery, when that happens and when that starts, that is something that is very important to us as the economic recovery, is getting that engine moving again, getting these businesses back to some sort of normal, so our residents can feel some sort of normalcy with what they're doing. So having said that, what was mentioned earlier, if you're interested in being a part of this, let me know. If you're interested in donating to any of these communities, we have several vetted organizations that we can direct you to, as well as if you are interested in donating any physical items, you can work with me or my team, and we can tell you where they're needed. We won't take it if we don't need it, and I will make sure that it gets to the right place. Thank you.
Great. No, thank you, Abby, for all of that. And for those in the audience, her sit rep reports that come out twice a day are incredibly helpful. So if you don't already see them, you should, and let us know if you're interested in getting them. So I want to remind everyone in the audience that we are taking questions at the end of this session. So if you haven't submitted yours, please do so now in the chat box so we can hit the ground running when we get to Q&A. Larry, over to you. Tell us about the California Chamber.
Good afternoon, I can say. Thank you for having me. I'm sitting in for Ellen Zerenberg today. It's really interesting when I think about what the comments that Abby just made, the economic impact up in the areas where those fires are not anywhere close to what happened in the Napa-Sonoma area or down in Southern California. Just because there's just a lot of small towns and a lot of small businesses. That said, whole cities are disappearing, and they all need to be rebuilt, restored, whatever. And the highways to and from all of those businesses up in that area all need to be addressed as well. And the cost to fight those fires is just astronomical. It's amazing the amount of money that is spent fighting those fires by the state of California and other organizations helping fight those fires. And Abby mentioned the size of Rhode Island. Actually, we're with over 1 million acres. We're the state of Delaware now, up in that area, up in Northern California. We're up to the state of Delaware, so it's a large area. And maybe there's 500,000 people, Abby, I think, in all of those areas, and they're all directly impacted. What is being indirectly impacted, as Abby pointed out, is the surrounding areas. I can look out my office. I'm on the 15th floor of the building I'm in. I can look out my office and maybe see 2 blocks. Everything else is smoke. You can't see beyond 2 blocks, and that's a major environmental impact in the surrounding areas. And as the wind blows, shifts from north to south, east to west, it's impacting all of those areas as well. So it's a very big challenge for the residents and the businesses in the surrounding areas that aren't directly impacted by the fires. And that's where there's going to be challenges down the road, both from a health point of view and from other things. I know there was a mention of getting insurance. You can't get insurance in those areas. They won't give it to you. Well, you can get it, but you want a $100,000 deductible. You can maybe get the insurance. It's very challenging there. So what could those businesses need? They need money, I think, to rebuild. They need help from Blue Shield. I mean, from the Red Cross, from the insurance companies. They need flexibility, especially from the insurance companies on helping rebuild. They need to have they need to be on the ground quickly and help all of those businesses get going and getting back so the residents can move back. It's a real challenge, because if there's no grocery stores, there's no restaurants, the people can come back, but where do they go to eat? They can't get any food. So it's a real challenge for everybody. So get the Red Cross to help, get FEMA to help. That's what's needed up there more than anything else. And then the environmental impact is not just today. It's going to be long-reaching, 1, 2, 3, 4 years maybe, even longer on the environmental side. So lots of challenges up in that area, and any help that can be provided from any of the businesses would be appreciated.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. Trevor, you and I have gone back a long way, and we've seen a lot of disasters. And I
want one of those shirts, by the way. I'd like to wear one.
Yeah. I'll get you one, Larry.
Thank you.
So, Trevor, we've seen a bunch, and we invited the Red Cross on, not because you're the only responder. You're one of many. But can you tell us what the Red Cross has been up to, and also what the nonprofit sector writ large needs to help in the relief and recovery efforts?
Yeah, thanks, Mark, and thanks for having me on. I when you look at what's going on this season, this wildfire season and hurricane season, you really have to roll the clock back about 5 years to 2015, and you start to see this shift in our climate and this rapid change from a smaller number of acute disasters to this chronic pace of disasters and this chronic risk of disasters in places like Duke County, Lassen County, Lake County in California, in Southwest Louisiana and Texas and Florida with the hurricanes. And we are, the pace we're at right now is almost beyond anything we've seen as far as a constant threat and risk of disaster. And so for the Red Cross right now, we're really working on three big operations. The first, as Abby and Larry and Bob mentioned, the fires out west. we have our largest centers of gravity are obviously the Dixie and Calder Fire, as those just continue to devastate whole communities, as many have said already on the call, whole communities being ravaged by these fires, but also they're in remote places of the state. They're in remote areas, and if you haven't spent a lot of time in California, you may not understand quite how remote these communities are and how isolated they are from services and assistance. And so we're spending a lot of time making sure we have evacuation centers open in partnership with the state, with the counties, and with many other nonprofits who are there serving alongside of us, also doing distribution of supplies, providing financial assistance for those that have lost homes, and preparing to see how we get involved in long-term recovery. But we are just at the beginning of wildfire season, so the total impact of these fires are a long way away. And as the fires potentially continue to shift, not only these fires, but new fires in more populated parts of the states, we know the risk is going to be ongoing. The other big set of disasters we're facing right now, of course, is hurricane season. There are records after records there as well. Much like we have every year a new record-breaking wildfire, we have an earlier storm, it seems like every year, every month. And right now we are dealing with the aftermath of Hurricane Fred that came up across the panhandle of Florida and has dumped quite a bit of rain up through West Virginia and Tennessee and other states. We have localized flooding that we're responding to in those areas, some small tornadoes. Grace is looking like it's going to head directly into the Yucatan as a Category 1 and then come across into central Mexico. And so we'll be thinking about our partners in the Mexican Red Cross and the Mexican communities there. And then we have Henri, which started off as a storm that looked like it was going to spin out to sea and now has a very serious threat of coming up along the East Coast and impacting Cape Cod and parts of New England earlier next week as a potential Category 1. And so that has obviously split our workforce into two to make sure we cover both the wildfires and the storms in the Southeast and the East Coast. We have about 680 disaster or Red Cross volunteers and staff deployed right now supporting those operations. But the third operation we're also jumping into now is the support of evacuees and evacuated personnel, U.S. personnel from Afghanistan. So we're standing up operations now to support those families coming back into country and evacuated Afghans coming into country. I will mention for California, I forgot to mention this, the model we've used for this set of fires is a firehouse model. So typically we would send in teams when the disaster happened. We'd augment the local staff when the disaster happened. But looking at this wildfire season, which started very, very early, the drought conditions that Abby mentioned, the red flag days we're seeing now, the winds we're seeing, we have 100 to 150 full-time volunteers and staff on the ground that we keep deployed every day to make sure we can open shelters as needed, to make sure we can respond to multiple wildfires across the state. And that's a new kind of response to the organization, but it reflects what I think our whole sector is having to do in these fires. We have to be able to respond in minutes, not days. We have to be able to respond to multiple parts of the state at once. And we have to be able to coordinate to make sure we're doing this well. And this gets to your last point, Mark. What can the members of the chamber do to help not only the Red Cross, but our partners? As we saw at the tail end of the Haiti discussion, financial donations are always the easiest and best way to get involved. It's important not only the Red Cross, but our many other partners who are doing phenomenal work across all the states, but especially in California with the wildfires. There are many partners who also help with logistics. So great partners like FedEx and UPS and Amazon who help us with logistics support, which is phenomenal because much of what we do, and I think Bob and Abby would both agree, a lot of what we do is logistics, right? Is getting stuff to the right place at the right time. So having experts in that field, other companies like Walmart and other retailers also help us with this. The third way is we have a lot of partners who are helping us with data. So whether that's actual technology or just helping us to understand the community, we are very, very focused on vulnerable communities right now. How do we think differently about the level of poverty, the level of social need before the disaster, so we can better respond after? And our corporate partners can be a great resource on how to understand the data we're looking at, how to process that, how to build better tools. So I am so grateful for the partners who are already involved in all that work. And really grateful, Mark, for the partnership with the Chamber to continue to bring these issues to life.
And thank you, Trevor, for that. We're delighted to be helpful any way we can. We've got a few minutes for questions. Administrator Fenton, this first one's for you. There are a number of companies that this isn't what they're used to. They're not used to being involved in the response or the recovery efforts. And if this is their first time, how do they best coordinate and plug into FEMA?
Well, one, I think the best way is really through local government or state government, and especially if they're local to that area, that's really the best way. We do have a private sector liaison that works very closely with Abby, the state private sector representative. We do have listservs and a website that you could go register on, and we do have a national business EOC. So if you are a larger company that may be in multiple states, especially when you have the bigger events in multiple states, we share information across those partners in doing that. But I would start locally where you're at and where your business is located and build relationships there. As I said, there's going to be all sorts of issues that those relationships will help you with. Just access alone into the area after the disaster or during the disaster are going to be invaluable. And having those relationships worked out ahead of time and how you can help, but yet how you can receive help through those partnerships are going to be important.
Okay, thank you for that. And while we talk about those local businesses, Larry, we mentioned local chambers. There's a lot of local chambers on this call. What should they be doing? How can they be helpful?
All of the chambers, the local chambers, especially here in California, are linked to us in Sacramento. And we're on calls with them on a regular basis. And we're always asking them, how can we help them help their businesses and what we can do. And in the case of the current fires, we're waiting for things to settle. And then we're going to do a contribution effort to get some money up into that area to help with the rebuild. That's what the local chambers pretty much shut down when fires like this happen, and they have no place to go. And so we end up being the communication for the local businesses that can communicate with us. And that's the biggest thing more than anything is communication to the residents and to the businesses, and whatever way we can get that to them, the better. And it's not easy. There's power lines going down, Wi-Fi doesn't work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the biggest issue is communication, in my view, when I really think about it, is communication with everybody affected. And the OES does do a great job. Those reports that come out of Abby's group twice a day, they are top notch and have a lot of valuable information on there. Now, and we just got to make sure it gets to the right people where they can use it.
Agreed. And, on that, I should remind the audience that the U.S. Chamber Foundation does have a disaster help desk for small businesses that is available 24/7. And if you're a small business, you can dial into that, you can log on to there, and we will direct you on how to best get help. And that goes for local chambers as well. Abby, we only got a minute or so. Quickly, needs list. What do the nonprofits need?
Money.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, honestly, it's money. But I did want to mention and say, whenever there is a need, it comes through, and we do send that out as a blast, as a donation opportunity. We try to make it that pretty aware when that happens. For example, we sent one out the other day for tents. And Amazon stepped up and said, yeah, absolutely, we will provide tents. So it's one of those, if you just get on my list, you can get that anywhere. But as I wanted to say what Mr. Fenton and Mr. Dickey were saying, it is all about communication. It is all about your locals, your local emergency responders. Where do businesses plug in? The thing is that it doesn't matter what level you plug in. We all talk to each other and we all work together. If someone plugs in with me that needs to talk to someone in Washington State, I will connect you to Washington State, or I will connect you to the feds, to FEMA, or to your locals. And so it's just getting plugged in anywhere in the system is the best way to go about it. And we will make sure that you get the information you need to help keep everything going with your business.
Yeah, thank you,
Can I make
Abby.
a comment real quick, Mark? for a
Real
second?
quick. Yep.
So, at the start of the this, the comment was made of how to be ready for in the event there's a disaster, and have all this list of things you can do. But the state a couple of years back passed allocated $1 billion to help prevent fires here in the state of California. I could make an argument that it should be $5 billion. If you want to take a number, there's just not enough money. $1 billion is not enough when you look at the size of this state. It's 100 million acres or something like that, of which maybe 60 million could burn at any one time. And $1 billion is a drop in the bucket to help prevent fires in that amount of acreage. So more money needs to be allocated there as well. And I'll get off my horse for that. But Abby, if you can take that message back, there's plenty of money in the state to spend. You got a big surplus. Put $4 billion more over there and get the
Yeah, I'll let the governor know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, all four of you. Yes, and I agree with all of you. More money, right? And
More money.
Nonprofit now. You're a company listening. Give it now, please. Sometimes the government can't say it as forcefully as I can, but please donate. That's all the time we've got today. I want to thank our four speakers. I want to thank the audience for tuning in. This won't be the last call we do on disasters this season for sure, but we want you to be able to get in with the right information and be able to help right away. So at the Chamber, we believe in less talk and more work. So we're going to sign off just a couple minutes late, but thank you.